Welcome to From Stakeholder Demands to Strategic Wins. It's a short lightning lesson to show you how to transform random feature requests into something that builds your career. Think of it like product judo, where we don't have to fight or accept a stakeholder request. Instead, we can redirect that energy into our own success. So what I'm going to do today is teach you 3 stackable techniques that will elevate your influence immediately and help you win with other people's ideas. So the first one is the product metrics ladder. The second is a reframe Madlib. And lastly is the comparison. Now, everyone wants to know when my next full course starts on becoming more influential, and I'll get to that at the end, I promise. But please pay attention to these techniques now, as they're extremely practical and powerful. First, a story. So 12 years ago, I landed my first VP of product role, a startup, and it was in my late 20s. I was a mix of emotions back then at reaching what was a long-term goal so early in life. But my CEO, he had a little bit different feelings. He was actually getting fed up with me. He had come into my office to tell me about the newest thing we needed to build. And he said, "Brennan, are you listening to me?" I was and I wasn't. Half of me heard him and the other half was spinning with internal thoughts like, not again. How am I going to fit this in this time? What are we going to have to cancel? What can I say to convince him not to do it? Is this even a good idea? I can't even tell. And so all this stuff was going on in my head while he was telling me about the idea, and we were just talking past each other, or at least me thinking past each other. It was just another day, another distraction. At least that's how I saw it. See, my CEO was an ideas guy. He was charismatic and creative, coming up with 10 ideas before I could even get 1 cup of coffee in the morning. So meanwhile, my product teams, they were getting whiplash though, from the massive shifts back and forth. And they were looking at me to defend them from the tyranny of shiny objects. I was in a lose-lose situation, failing on all sides. If I argued or pushed back, my CEO got ticked off. If I just gave in though, my team's morale plummeted. And then, but also what I found interesting is that if I gave in, my boss left wondering why he had to do my job for me. And I didn't really know what to do. So before I keep going about how to resolve this and what I learned, I want to get a pulse from the audience here. So who's felt this tension before? If you felt something similar, put a 1 in the chat if you like chat better, or throw an appropriate reaction on the screen if you like emojis better. All right, we got some 1s coming in for sure. All right. Yeah. Oh, there you go, Kevin. Yeah, you can do emojis in the chat or the reactions on the screen too. Lots of 1s. Okay. See, you're not alone in this. And I wasn't. I thought I was, though, because I wasn't sure how to do product management really well just yet. So this scenario is real and is far too common. But it took me far too long to realize that my boss wasn't the problem. It was a lack of approach. So today I'm going to show you what I learned to do and save you years of frustration. Before I do, let me address a common question about our job as product managers. And some of this might not just apply to product managers, it's applying to founders or builders. Just shipping the idea is what actually comes up a lot. Some people ask, so why not just do the hard work and build what's asked for? And the reason is because we don't fear hard work. We fear meaningless work. Without context for why our work matters, our teams lose their passion. And when you lose passion, every day becomes dull, pointless, and it's just bland. So let's add some context and we'll get our passion back. We're going to use a simple visual tool called the product metrics ladder. The product metrics ladder helps with strategy, goals, and initiatives all in one. So some people even use this as a roadmap to explain decisions without much effort, because it connects your backlog, which is at the bottom, to product metrics, to customer outcomes, and business outcomes. So the way it works is your features, they influence your product metrics, and then improving your product metrics leads to achieving product objectives, and achieving product objectives leads to more customer value. And when we create customer value, we can capture some of it ourselves. So again, another quick pulse check. Does your company have a clear strategy and cascading metrics like this? So give me a check mark if you do, and maybe a laughing emoji or something else like that for no. Yeah, there's 1 for sure. Okay. So sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. That's good. Yes and no. All right, so we get some mixes here and there, and it's great. You would expect, though, that the best companies have this all the time, but it's so surprising how often this comes up in that it's a partial or vague strategy. And then we have just generalized incentives that are built into our system, and we're not exactly sure. So when we don't have this, what we end up with is a battle of ideas. And really, it ends up being whoever's the highest wins out in that battle. So let's go through and learn a simple way for you to be able to solve that with an example from a real product. So today you're going to learn how to do this for yourself, even if it's not given to you. Okay. So imagine you're building a regulatory research platform for healthcare regulations around the world. This was actually one of my old products. So specialized information, but it's broad in topics and it has global locations and it's made even more complex by the government agencies that are publishing this in multiple languages, not the most sophisticated types of, let's say, providers of information. So your customers, though, they rely on your product to monitor thousands of regulations worldwide each year. And then they need to make compliance decisions about their business. And if they don't react to a new regulation when it comes out, let's say they miss it, they could literally be shut down by the government in that region. So that is a perilous position for these customers to be in. Now, given the period we're in today, your CEO, your stakeholders all want something AI oriented on the roadmap and stat, of course, right? And Camille, it's not prescription products necessarily, but yeah, pharmaceuticals need to manufacture prescriptions and other things like that, life sciences too. So you think about it, complicated healthcare stuff. So your mission here is going to take this random, let's say it's Gen AI content analysis and summaries. That might be the idea, right? Anything with AI in it today is going to be coming up probably every day. So what we need to do is we need to connect the bottom of the ladder where this is, consider that your junk drawer of a backlog, all the way to the top. We need to show a logical path of impact that could take a feature that what impact it could have on the business and our customers. You have to figure that out and show that connection. And no, you can't go directly from, hey, we shipped a new feature to getting revenue, right? It doesn't work that way. You need to go from feature to customer value instead. But you're still not making a single jump. You got to assume that there are multiple rungs on this product metrics ladder. We don't go straight all the way up in one leap. So how can we take the customer's major objective and break it down into smaller parts that are necessary to achieve it? So our customer, they want fast, inexpensive compliance decisions. That's what they're trying to get to, regardless of any product, regardless of any process, regardless of any people, right? That's what they're trying to accomplish. But what must be true with our offering, a product plus service, whatever it might be, our offering, what must be true for them to achieve that outcome? Well, first, what we can break it down into, customers need to be able to answer questions about regulations on their own quickly, and they have access to the regulations that are pertinent to them. Also must be quickly. So those two are now your highest product objectives, which means we strongly believe that if we satisfy those needs really well, that customers will achieve their desired outcome. So how would we define really well? Let's break that down again into two more things that must be true, or three or more, however. So starting on the left side, about answering users' questions, and you got to make sure that it's fast, right? Well, how fast? Let's set a goal that at least 75% of the questions that they have result in an answer. So they've got to get their question answered. And then the speed part of it that we're talking about needs to be, let's set another goal, less than a minute to get a response. So now we know that if they ask a question, they'll get an answer. And if they ask a question, they'll get an answer fast, so they don't have to keep digging, right? That's the advantage of using our product. How are we sure we did a good job? And come back the next month when new regulations come out. So now we're on to something. We've got product metrics now that we can influence with those fancy buzzwords. AI could lead to better answers. It could lead to faster decisions. It could lead to repeat visits because the experience is improved. So now those things make sense. And when we expand on that and do that for everything in our backlog or the categories of things in our backlog, we now have our product metrics ladder, which becomes an anchor image in our head. So I suggest sharing this out, validating it, of course, right? This is still just your ideas to begin with, and iterating on it. But even if you don't do all those things, you now have at least some context for why those features are in your backlog. So after this session, do this for me. Do this for your product immediately. Build this out. Don't wait on someone else to do it for you. So all the people that gave me the laughing emojis and everything else a second ago, this is something that you could do right now. So take the initiative and make some educated guesses. You don't have to get any of this right, but this is how you build your strategy muscles. So we're gonna practice, and then we'll validate, and maybe we're off, but we get to iterate. But everything that we've now added here is context for your team, so it makes sense. And then they can make decisions without you in the moment too, telling them what to do as well. All right, we're done with the first phase, all in less than 5 minutes if you practice this a little bit. So now let's go back to those pesky stakeholders. We've got our product metrics ladder, but how do we use it when we're talking about talking to stakeholders who keep coming into your office with their crazy ideas that end up draining away our passion with every request, or really every demand, because most of these things are not so much requests. So how do we get that passion back when a stakeholder approaches us? We actually lean in to what they have to say. That's right, these stakeholders aren't our enemies. They're our advocates and our secret weapons. How? Well, by using their ideas to bolster our strategy and success. So with a few tweaks in how we respond to their requests that are critical here, we need context before we can decide what to do next with their idea. So we're not going to fight against it, and we're not going to just accept it. We're going to dig in and start by choosing sincere curiosity and interest as your first reaction. So if you come up with defensiveness or apathy, neither of them work really well. They end into that dull, bland existence that you might have with your product team. So choose curiosity, because you can tell when you're going to have that conversation with that person. And we're going to use that curiosity to then get the context we want and use it like a real conversation as well. So talk to them like a human, but figure out the things that you need. So we need to know something like, well, who is this for? You could ask those questions directly, like what we hear classically are, tell me what problem they're trying to solve. What are they really trying to accomplish? What's here? All these stakeholders, they all see through that. Those are bland, banal types of approaches here that people have regurgitated. You need to actually make this more like you're going to be interacting with a friend that's brought up something interesting here. So you can say something that's more human, like, wow, tell me more. Where did this idea come from? And who specifically are we talking about? Can you give me a real name and characteristics so that I can picture them more easily? I love that question, because then it helps them focus on a specific situation that I can ask them about that observation there. What else? Well, what's broken? What opportunity are they missing out on? We need to know how often this happens. Does that happen frequently, like daily, weekly, or monthly? Is there a workaround? You could say something like, yikes, like responds to the actual issue with empathy here. At first, it's probably fake, but eventually your real empathy comes in as you do this more. So what do they have to do now instead? Like feel pain on behalf of the person that they're talking about? Or what happens if they can't accomplish that goal? Is that a bad thing? You need to know the importance of this problem too. How prevalent is it? Are there other people like this person? Where else have you seen it? Also be specific where you can, like get more names so that it's not generally, oh, it's everywhere, right? And then lastly, if we helped all of those other people too, what do you think would happen for us? So where did this go? So this is a conversation with a friend, brought up something interesting. And what I want you to do is leverage a gift that you've been given. Great product managers can't help their curiosity sometimes. Learning something new just compels us. So use that gift of yours and draw out more information, get the context you need. All right, so now we have all of our required elements for context. We've got a persona, a problem, frequency of problem, prevalence of the persona with the problem, gap between today and tomorrow, the theoretical benefit, the potential business impact, and of course, we have the possible solution to this, which was their original idea. So what we're going to do is, here's the trick. We have to reframe this. We're going to use this Reframe Madlib, okay, to anchor your stakeholder on the size and importance of the problem and away from the proposed solution. So we're going to get further from that, but we're still going to include their solution in that. So you can ask a question like, can I summarize what I'm hearing to make sure I got it? Of course, they're going to say yes. And then you fill in the blanks with all the things that you just gotten for that context. So there are so many of this persona. They're all struggling with this issue. Today, they have to do X as their workaround. But if they were able to, and use a generalized version of their concept, I'll get to that in a second, then they could close the gap between today and this potential benefit tomorrow. Did I get that right? And they'll say yes and they'll start nodding vigorously. One thing that's important here is what you've done is not only introduce 5/6 of your conversations about the customer and their problem, and only 1/6 is the actual solution, but you need to generalize, bucket their idea into something more broad. Because what you're doing, you're priming them to think of other ways so that they're not so attached to their idea when we get to the next step. Now, we're going to actually do some collaboration. You might need to do some quick mental math to make this part work. But what this does is it helps when you get to the math part, it aligns with your metrics, which we're going to do next. It doesn't have to be precise, it's kind of directional. So say something like, interesting. I bet there are many things we could be doing to help that persona with this issue. Okay. It could, and if we did that, it could amount to what you could calculate as the total size of the problem and opportunity, whatever it might be, and then also the potential business outcome for us. So you're anchoring on those metrics that you haven't used for comparison yet, but you will in a moment. And you'll ask the question, what else could we think of? This is where the collaboration comes in. You can start adding your own ideas in to show that it's a good brainstorming session. Now, you may be thinking, isn't this just making my job harder by creating more ideas? Like, isn't that the whole point? Like, I wanted to avoid these random ideas coming in. But what's actually happening is you're building advocacy. So what you're doing is you're moving from me versus you to us versus the problem. And you're bringing in their expertise to help solve this problem. You're shown that they're observant by noticing it. And now you're getting a chance to show them that they're creative and you're noticing them being creative. So you've diffused a charged situation. You've built a reputation for listening. And now you're making others feel good about themselves. If you don't do this, they'll stop coming to you and they'll go over your head to complain. Or if they're already your boss, well, you don't want to be available in this job market. Let's say that. So are we done now? No way. We still have to be good stewards of our company and make sure that only the best ideas get built, not just any idea, right? Not any that just came from this conversation. So how do we do that? They're still expecting you to build something related to their idea. How do we know if we should or shouldn't? And how do we make sure that they don't leave thinking that we will when we may decide to do something else? Time to bring back the product metrics ladder. And we're going to start comparing. Now that we have the makings of an impact statement, albeit it's a biased one because it's coming from one person, we can still use that as a basis here. You're not going to make any promises, but you're going to slot this in. So pull up the visual on a screen if they're in your office, or go to a whiteboard and sketch it out. Remember, you need to have this as your anchor image in your memory so that you can come up and say, this is the context for why we're doing it. This leads to this, this leads to this, this leads to this. You're going to do a live prioritization together, without promising anything again, but you want them to come to the same conclusion that you have on your own before they leave. So let's say the stakeholder, they originally suggested web scraping and to get regulations. And that evolved to, as we talked about it, into RPA monitoring of websites and machine learning for categorization. Very fancy stuff, right? So we've expanded on that idea and made it even better. Well, now that you have the context for that idea, the other 5/6 of that Madlib there, match its targeted problem to a corresponding product metric. So we're not going to go idea versus idea here yet. What we're going to do is, if you look at the right side, you can see that there's a hurdle to accomplishing this customer goal of getting content in fast. So in this case, we need to have, if a new regulation is posted, we want to get it within 24 hours, okay? So the proposed RPA plus ML can likely help with getting content in faster than a human could, once it's already sourced and mapped, of course. So now what we can do is compare the ROI of this to an existing initiative of hiring 10 content experts to monitor and mine those regulatory websites. So we're using the product metric itself as the rubric for choosing between two different ideas. And we don't even have to choose between them. We need to figure out how much does this idea influence this metric versus this idea influence this metric, and then the costs associated with it. So we're using an ROI type of approach here. So stick to metrics and stick to the problems to avoid an idea showdown. So you want to keep it mathy where you can. And of course, this math is all kind of made up at the time, but at least it's directional and you can have a conversation about that. So maybe you choose, you're going to hire only 2 content experts instead of 10 to set up the initial mapping and training data. And then you can use the savings of those other 8 to build the RPA and machine learning. So it's a win-win-win. Now you're probably thinking, well, what if I get a customer problem that's not on the ladder, right? That sounded too easy, okay? Well, what do we do here? Let's say that we came up with another idea. And this one is about filing customers' documentation for them. That's pretty different than what we're focused on. What do we do here? Well, you pause and discuss. Should it be a problem on the roadmap? Is it more impactful right now than something else? This is a worthy debate, not one about whose idea is better. After all, you may learn something new that you missed in your research. Most stakeholders have different vantage points than us. Sometimes we as product managers or builders, founders, we can get stuck inside the organization and we have little opportunity to look up and look out. And I know a lot of people that feel stuck in delivery mode all the time are this way. So guess what? These stakeholders actually do have a different perspective. They're bringing in new information that we should consider. And if we do make a change, this is the good kind of roadmap change. So when your roadmap changes, it can be good sometimes, right? In fact, if your roadmap doesn't change after 6 months, you know what it tells me? It tells me you're not learning. And when you stop learning, you're destined to fail. So what I want you to do is keep your humility, keep your curiosity high, as there's always something to learn from somebody. And these stakeholders are a great opportunity to get more data to make better decisions, which also bolsters, again, your success and your product success. So it's not just because it came from somewhere else that it's a bad idea or a bad piece of data. It could be great. So this lesson, it's not meant to be a lesson of defense against the dark arts. You want to use every request that comes in to your advantage, even if that does mean you end up building their idea. Adapting to new data is 1,000 times more important than shipping the wrong thing on time. So don't just keep your head down and say, oh, well, it's a stakeholder request. It's probably information that I've already done my research on. Consider it a little bit more. Okay, so we're speeding through this, I understand. But in summary, you've got the ladder for context. You're going to use reframing for advocacy, and then you can compare ideas against the metrics for prioritization. So you can call it product judo. You're going to redirect stakeholder energy into alignment and support. And this practice works about 75% of the time. Some people are still a little hard-headed about it, but you've gained an advocate now that's going to speak to others positively about you and your roadmap on your behalf. All right, so now it's your turn. While we were going through the healthcare example, I hope you were picturing your own situations. But before we get into the live examples and Q&A, I promise to answer your question about how to get 1,000 times more depth on topics like these so that you can become the influential PM. Well, my next 2 cohorts for my full course start in mid-October and mid-November. They're running 4 weeks each with 2 live sessions and 1 office hours per week. And I've already seen many of my former students back here for more. Always great to see your growth over the years. And if you came here like they did with the intention of learning and growing, you are my kind of people. And for that, I want to give you a surprise gift, even if you're watching the recording, which I know a lot of people couldn't make this time right now, but you're still learning and you're growing. So my gift to you is a whopping 25% off my October cohort. You can use it within 7 days to get the discount. I'm going to paste the link in the course in the chat. I'd love to see you there again. And while I'm pasting it in, start thinking of any examples that you want to use that we can work through. All right. So if you're gonna offer an idea here, Yes, you're welcome, Nikita. Then I want you to either use your raise the hand button or put it in the chat. I'll try to go through this as well. And give me the industry, the general value proposition of the product, and then the random feature idea you might have gotten. And let's practice with a couple of them. All right, let's see. Anybody got an idea that they want to share? Or generally a question too. Okay, how does idea generation get measured? What are the metrics mid to long term? And where do people share it? Well, idea generation, you can think of it like innovation. You need to be able to think about in two different ways. So you need to diverge around the problem. So you think of many different possible problems you could be solving for the customer that could make you money, and you're justified in building a solution for it and solving for it. And then when you do choose the right problems, you're going to converge on those. Then you're going to expand again into the idea generation. That's where your brainstorming happens. So you expand into all the possible ideas you and your creative people can think of, and then you choose some of the best ones through experimentation, through testing of those as well. So it's not necessarily how many ideas, but you do want to make sure you get enough to be able to test and validate that you're on the right track with that. Where do business metrics like GDR and NDR fit into this product judo? Can you give me a definition? What are GDR and NDR in your context?
Gross dollar retention and net dollar retention is basically measuring churn and upscales.
Oh, right. So you're going to get that on the business outcomes. And I actually have a couple, I have a couple slides from my course that kind of gets into that. Let's say that we've got a business objective of like, we need more revenue. Okay. So you still have to relate that back to, okay, I want retained customers. I need to do what to retain them. It goes back to your customer value first. Why would they bother being retained? Why would they bother coming back? So you can't jump straight from feature to, desired outcome. You need to work that backwards or work it down. So you can think about like, well, what else can we do to influence that? And then what are some sub influences of that one as well? There's another way to think about it to where you work backwards too. So you've got that business impact that you're looking for. And again, you can't just go straight to it, right? That's what we want to get as a lagging result of giving a customer something that delights them. So you need to be thinking about that first before you get the revenue. And how do you do that? Well, you have to make sure they accomplish some task in your product or offering so that they can get that delight. And before that, they have to know about it at all. So in my course, we go into this in a lot more depth, but that's where you tie in your business outcomes all the way back to your features too. Okay. Anybody bold with an example? You're welcome, Brian or Bjorn. Anybody bold with an example they want to cover? All right. I know it's scary being in front of everybody. Okay. Well, so we've covered a lot. This is deceptively simple, and I try to give it to you in just less than 30 minutes, which is really hard, but it's also very challenging. I understand that. So if you have more questions after you leave, you can reach me on LinkedIn. We can talk about it, or you can come to that course in October or November and learn a lot more. We'll do workshops and even one-on-ones in that case. But what I want you to remember here is that every demand that you're getting from a stakeholder is energy. You can either fight that energy or you can redirect it. The product metrics ladder gives you context, the reframing builds allies, and then comparing by metrics earns you trust in your decisions. So that's how you turn stakeholder chaos into strategic wins. So next time that somebody walks in your office with a new idea, don't brace yourself, but smile, because now you know how to turn it into your own momentum. And that's your product judo. All right, everybody. Thank you, and I will see you next time.
See you.
Thanks, Brennan.
You're welcome.